Hey, everybody. Welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am so blessed and honored to be here with Julie King, Leadership Development, Learning Program Manager, Advocate Aurora Health. Julie, how's it going?
Going well, Ben. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
I'm stoked. This is one of the conversations I've been looking forward to personally. I mean, they're all great conversations this week on Pride Week. We've had some phenomenal stuff. I've gotten emotional 2 days in a row. Let's go for three. No pressure.
See if I can get you.
Yeah, see if you can pull a tear out on my eyeballs. That'd be awesome. No, but like this is something that really resonates with me. This topic. You wrote an amazing article that was brought to my attention by Matt Tobel, who is a good friend of ours and is a friend who will be on the show on Friday, co-hosting, actually. We're going to see if we can talk him into more co-hosting gigs. But he brought this article to my attention right here that you wrote, 5 things your LGBTQ coworkers want you to know.
So
and
small
he wanted
clarification.
Yeah.
I didn't write it. I was interviewed for it. Just so you know, it wasn't me that actually wrote the article, but it's definitely my story and it's my words that were captured.
Okay. My bad.
Okay.
And I don't know why Matt wanted me to read this article so bad, but that's why we're here to talk. Okay. No, all kidding aside. But before we get into that, I want to hear your story and I want to hear how this article came to be. Let's real quick give some shout outs here. We got people coming in. Let us know who you are, where you are, any questions. I want to know what questions you have about how to have conversations at work. Let's see here. Janaína checking in from Brazil. So ready to learn a lot with Julie. Janaína, proud to say is my inclusion manager. Love Jana out there. Stacy, hi, Ben and Julie. This is going to be a great show. Thank you, super producer Stacy. Tim Quirk, hello, Julie and Ben. Hashtag IMWNY, Western New York in the house. I'm going to hit that like button. Everybody out there, go ahead and smash that like button. Give us a little green round of applause out there to get us started here. Julie, let's hop into it. How did this article come to be? What's the story?
So it's interesting. The story technically starts about 6-7 years ago when part of my role here at Advocate Aurora Health is to facilitate training and learning sessions. And I was facilitating a session called Crucial Conversations, which is essentially, how do you have conversations when stakes are high, emotions are high, things like that. And one of the participants in that session wrote on the evaluation, next time leave the gay agenda at home. Now, I didn't have a gay agenda. There's no such thing as a gay agenda. But really what happened was, as I'm teaching the course, I draw from personal experience. So I share stories about my family. I would share stories about my wife or about the 2 kids that we've got at home. And so that was perceived as a gay agenda to this participant in my organization who just didn't feel that it belonged as part of this curriculum. So cut to, 6-7 years later, I'm now in leadership development. I'm a learning program manager. Part of my role now is to help support our system learning for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we had a session where it was sort of a lunch and learn, and we had this topic over lunch. Leaders could come in. We would show them various resources about diversity, equity, and inclusion, share not only where you could find those resources in various places in our organization, but also how to use them. And part of that conversation included me sharing a story, again, about my wife. One of our folks from our public affairs and marketing team reached out to me after that session to say, hey, thanks so much. That was such a great session. Is it possible for us to interview you for an article to highlight during Pride Month? So none of this would have happened, me being on the show, you and I meeting, none of this would have happened had that little evaluation comment 6-7 years ago that stuck with me all this time. None of this would have happened had that not occurred. Had those words not stayed with me, had I continued to share my story, had I continued to just be who I am and be proud of who I am and continue to be out as a proud lesbian in my organization. And so that's why we're here today. All of that happened.
Wow, I'm getting kind of the chills about it. This is so interesting, and thank you for being here, and thank you for continuing to tell your story and your truth and being authentically yourself. We have people checking in right now. Please keep checking in. Leave us your questions here. Richard Majewski says, "Gay agenda." Wow. Yeah, because you wouldn't say, if I started talking about my wife and kids, you wouldn't say, "Hey, leave out the straight agenda."
Right.
Hey, leave out the straight agenda. Don't bring that over here and try to force your straight agenda on me. It's like, it sounds, it would be absurd to say, and I just, I can't imagine. But it's so interesting you say that. So we sent out the Love and Relo lineup this week to thousands of people, as we do every week. And I got back one really nasty response from somebody. And it was just one response. It was from somebody, honestly, I didn't even know. I had to look this person up. I'm like, I don't even know how they got on my list, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I'm like offended. And then I'm like, you know what? To kind of almost to your point in a similar vein, it's like, this validates why we're having these conversations and why we're doing this work, because this still obviously needs to be happening.
Yep. What I tell people is, we're all on a journey. Doesn't mean we're all on the same journey. Doesn't mean we're all at the same parts of our journey, but we're all on a journey to learn. And you'll get a comment like that here and there. And I may get flack for doing this show or for writing that article. So far, I will say the response has just been overwhelmingly positive, which is really, you get the warm fuzzies, right? But you never know. This could spark something else. But I'm just going to continue to be who I am, because that's who I am.
Yeah, and that's really the only way to be. We got people checking in. This is amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. Please leave those comments and the love in the comments. Let's see here. Richard from The Smoke in London. I don't know what that means, Richard. I don't know if that's a speakeasy or if there's fires. I really have no idea. Either way, let me know. I hope you're safe. Jack Jampel, hello, Julie and Ben. What's up, Jack? Love to know how, from a corporate side, I'd love to hear some thoughts about inclusivity and any questions you might have. Val from Deluxe checking in. What's up, Val? Hope you're well. Eric Lewis checking in. Hey, Julie and Ben. That's great, Eric. Thank you. Robert from Nashville. Hey, Robert. Hope you're well. This is fantastic. Love to hear your questions. Leave them. DJ Lizzie Beats in the house from Chi-Town. What's up, Liz?
My neighbor. That's where I'm from too.
Are you? That's great. Where in the world are you right now?
So technically, at this moment, I'm in my basement in one of the suburbs just north of the city of Chicago.
Nice. Well, we will be there in October. There will be a big party. We will make sure to invite you.
Great.
Eric Lewis says, so proud of you, Julie.
Do you know Eric? From my MBA program a million years ago.
Oh, that's cool. That's the great thing about the internet. It's like you never really lose touch with people, for better or worse, right?
Yep.
Paul Seymour, such a great week of topics. Thank you, Ben. Paul was on yesterday talking about his family with Jason Sudo and with Mariana Barros. Let's see here. Awesome. Smoke. Yeah, see, now I learned something. This is great. Fantastic. So I want to know, so you kind of, in a way, it seems like you do a lot of training for a living. Do you train in a broad array of topics? I want to understand a little bit more about your work.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I've been in this role for just over 2 years. And up until, just a few months ago, I was probably doing a little bit more broad. It's not all training, but just growth and development of our leaders. We've got several thousand leaders throughout our organization. And with all of the focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, probably 90% of my job now is really focused on helping to support and sustain systemic learning from that DE&I perspective. So we have some restructuring and reorganization within our learning and development program. And really most of my job now is focused in that space. So yes, I do facilitate on lots of topics, but lately really been focused on DE&I.
When you're facilitating your training sessions, can you give me a couple of maybe the biggest aha moments for people in your training sessions?
Yeah, and it just, there's no one aha moment, because again, as I said before, we're all on a different journey. People are on different points along the journey. So I think that aha moment is really personal and individualized. So not everybody has that same light bulb moment. What I will say is, when we really think about it and we peel back the layers, people are people. So you and I are just having a conversation. I'm me, I'm representing myself. I'm not necessarily representing my organization, so I'm talking about my work in it, but it's just you and me having a conversation. So when we have training sessions and we talk about creating an inclusive environment or resolving workplace conflict, or again, that crucial conversations class that I talked about earlier, each person is taking away from that different aha moments based on who they are and where they are on the journey. For some folks, this is not a topic. They live it every day. This is who they are. They know just as much, if not more, than me. And for others, maybe they've never heard of certain terms. So it really depends on each individual person and their experience as far as what their light bulb moment is. And we'll see what yours is this hour. We'll see if I can get you to tear up, and we'll see what your aha moment is.
All right, I'm gonna be really vulnerable, and I'm gonna be really candid and open. So where I'll you know what, and let's use me as a case, right? As an object lesson here, I guess. I am a cisgendered white male.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that term last year when we were doing.
And I was just going to say, my guess then is that not everybody knows what that is. So share.
Okay, so this is my interpretation, and you correct me if I'm wrong. So I believe a cisgender male is someone who identifies with the gender that people would assume they are. Kind of a traditional gender type. I don't know if that's.
I'll make it even easier for you.
Please do help me.
All cisgender means is that you're not transgendered. And what I will say is, if somebody is looking for a really great resource that gives you kind of a glossary of terms, it sounds a little bit strange, but go to the GLAAD, GLAAD, go to their media resource guide. Again, sounds kind of weird, but really it is the best glossary and definition of terms for this umbrella that I've ever seen. I really recommend that specific resource. And it will tell you things like glossary of terms. It'll tell you what terms to avoid, what things might be considered offensive, like gay agenda, which we've already talked about. But really, the way that they define it, it's just easy. Cisgendered means you're not transgender. That's it.
Can we put that? Can someone in the comments there who's watching this put a link to that site, please? I would love that.
It's GLAAD Media Resource Guide.
GLAAD Media Resource Guide. And GLAAD, did you say with 2 D's? GLAAD?
2 A's. GLAAD.
GLAAD. All right, got it.
All right. Used to be called the gay and lesbian. Oh, I'm going to get the terms wrong. But yeah, GLAAD.
This is why we need glossaries to define this. There we go. Here we go. Extra points for Elizabeth Gartman. Think this is it? I think so. Looks like it might be it. Awesome. Very cool. So so that's kind of who I am, I guess. And then so where I'm at on my journey is I'm seeking. So I've been doing LOVE+RELO for about 1.5 years now. And as part of this, like as a kind of a tangent of this show is not only giving space for perspectives and experiences that may not always get space, but it's also for us who are watching to learn, either vicariously or by participating in the show. And then also in some way for me to hopefully, I don't know, maybe like kind of also model some types of behaviors and conversations as well for people, as I'm going through the journey myself. Right. And so I aspire to be an ally. I aspire to be an ally to people, all people. And so, but that's kind of where I'm at. And I will, we work through a lot of Black issues with Black Lives Matter. We work through how to be an ally to women in the workplace. This was a topic, LGBTQ issues were a topic that honestly was never touched, was never talked to directly. It was talked about, like, how do we care for LGBTQ employees and our policies, but we didn't talk to LGBTQ people and say, and have conversations. Right. And so it's like, So I thought this needed to happen. And then, but in doing so, I mean, I'm a little out of my depth, to be completely honest, right? But I want to get more comfortable, and I think I need the language and some of the tools and things like that to have the conversations.
Yeah, and I think what's so important, first of all, thank you for creating this space. I think all DE&I, all diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff, there's so much intersectionality. So I love that you've been spending a lot of time focusing on various aspects of it, and this is just one aspect of it. What I will say, though, is that it's really important to understand that being an ally, it's not enough to just say, I'm an ally. It's not a noun. It's really a verb. It's an action. In order to be an ally, and I haven't caught all of your past shows, so I'm not sure what allyship looked like in some of your other shows, but really what that means is stepping up and helping members of the community or a marginalized community with your actions. Learning is absolutely step number one. You got to know the terms. You have to know what's offensive, what's not offensive. How best to be an ally starts with educating yourself and learning. But then really it's taking that next step to be an ally with your actions. So
I'm just
I love that
taking
you're
notes.
on the journey. Yeah, no, I love that. And I love
because
that
at the
you're
end,
on
I'm
the
going to give you
journey.
my light bulb moments here.
Okay, perfect. What allyship could look like for various members of the LGBTQ community, it could look like standing up for somebody in a bathroom if somebody starts questioning them. Now, I'm not representing all of the LGBTQ community. Clearly, I cannot represent an entire group. Nobody can. I don't even represent all feminine presenting women, femme women in the LGBTQ community. What I am doing is representing myself. But if I go to a women's bathroom, probably I'm not going to be getting a hard time, right? I look like I should go to the women's bathroom. But when my wife goes to the bathroom, she is not as feminine looking. So she may get a hard time when she goes to the public bathroom. So being an ally means doing things like standing up for people if somebody starts to give somebody a hard time in the bathroom, instead of kind of sheepishly walking away and letting that just play out, is stepping in for somebody. That's being an ally. And I'm not saying going to the bathroom is the only way to be an ally. I'm just giving you one example where this really does come into play. When my wife and I are out in public and she has to go to the bathroom, I go with her almost every time.
But you're right. So it's not the only place, but you know what I love about the bathroom example is it's an unexpected place. It's a place where you're going in, you're just trying to like go to the bathroom, and you're not like necessarily, I'm not necessarily mentally prepared to have a confrontation about this, right? It's one thing to get on a show and I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I got my notes here. I'm prepared. I've done some research. It's like, versus I'm going, to the bathroom and you just kind of get caught off guard. And then you're like, what do I do? Right.
But that's it though, Ben. You're not prepared for that to be your daily life. But for lots of people in the LGBTQ community, that is part of the daily struggle. Do I hold it? Can I make it? Do I risk going to the bathroom? Is it safe to go to the bathroom? I mean, think about that. Just peel that back. Go to the bathroom. People make decisions about going to the bathroom, whether they're going to feel safe. You'd never think about that.
That's very foreign to me. And I think that also illustrates another point of how much maybe I have to learn and maybe how much I have to grow, maybe even in my empathy and understanding of the day-to-day challenges. And I think also the imperative of, like you said, stepping in for people, because I do have a voice, right? I do have a presence both physically, and, on the internet or whatever. Right. And so it's like, how do we leverage our presence and our, it was interesting. I went to dinner last night with a bunch of cisgendered white guys. And it was very, very broy environment. And we're at like a steakhouse or whatever. We're having drinks or whatever. And they're like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I did a podcast. They're like, oh, who do you interview? And I'm like, relocation people. I was like, this week is Pride Week, and of course it's like, oh, and then like, some, not jokes, but, just like, oh, Pride Week, And I'm like, yeah, well, actually, it was a really good episode. And we talked to some parents and like, it was like kind of a tearjerker and it was so interesting because in that moment, it was like kind of a pivotal moment in the conversation because the conversation was about to go, it could have went either way. Right. Yep. It could have went super like off the rails with the jokes and the whatevers, or we could have had a moment to like learn and dig in and like actually like dig in.
Yep.
And I think,
one conversation at a time.
yeah, and I think my reaction totally changed the tone, because then everybody kind of like chilled, got quiet, and was like, yeah, like,
You
good
know
for
why
them.
though, Ben? Because you made it personal, because you had a personal tie. It's so much easier to make a joke about some other group of people because they're the other group of
Yeah.
people. You made it personal. You brought it into your own life. This is my job. This is what I'm doing. These are the stories we're sharing this week. You made it personal. It's a lot harder to bully or make jokes about another group when you've got some personal connection to that group.
Yeah, when it's like, oh, that's my friend, or that's my brother, or that's
Right.
my sister, or that's my,
Exactly. Yep.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. We've got some really cool comments. Keep the comments coming here. I want to know what you think out there. This is if I'm digging in here and getting personal and vulnerable and engaging personally, I want to see everybody out there doing the same thing as well. It's trust me, it's more interesting when you do. Let's see here. We've got people checking in. A lot of people stepped up to the plate with the resource guy. That's awesome. People are digging the conversation. Michelle, that's great. Sharon, you did a great job with Asian hate. Thank you, Sharon. We did have a wonderful episode on that. We may do actually another follow-up episode on Asian hate with Mike and folks. That's awesome. Richard says, massive kudos to your guests and you, Ben, this week for really putting these discussions out there. Personable, friendly, professional. May I be so bold as to suggest applause for Elizabeth and also for you. Amazing. Please, everyone, here's to a great show tonight and great shows this week. I hope that's okay. Well, it is okay. There you go, Richard. Thank you. Matt Tobel, great information being shared. So helpful. Such an important conversation. Thank you, Matt. I loved our conversation the other day, Matt. I can't wait to have it on Friday as well. This is great. We got a Ben. Can I throw a question real quick? Second time listening. Second time listening is not a question, Jameson. Throw it in there. Let's see what you got, bud. All right. Jana, taking notes. Proud of you, Ben Cross. Thank you, Jana. I appreciate your support. Really. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna wait for Jameson's second question. Please also throw your questions in. Hit that like button. We got a whole bunch of applause going here. This is great. Okay. So I wanted to also, let's see here. I got some other questions here for you. So here I am on my journey. And so now what advice would you give someone who's trying to learn more about the LGBTQ community?
Yeah. So first piece of advice, I already gave it. It's use that media guide and just really start to learn terminology, do some education. The second piece of advice I would say is in this day and age, most people have a social media presence, whether it's on LinkedIn, which is more business related, but whether it's on LinkedIn or Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, try to diversify your newsfeed. So if you are somebody who in your current day-to-day life don't have a lot of interaction with people who are in other more marginalized communities, find those folks and friend them or connect with them, whatever that social media platform term is, and just diversify your newsfeed. Become more exposed to people who are unfamiliar to you. Yeah,
this is such a great tip, Julie, because our news feeds and the algorithms are actually working the opposite way right now, right?
Exactly.
And we saw this during elections and during all sorts of stuff where it's like, you know, it's the feeling that we're almost living in two Americas with two sets of information and two sets of narratives. And it's like, how can people be so far apart? Well, because we're ingesting totally different narratives. And it's funny because we think we go on the internet, which possesses all the information, but the truth is it's now being curated and being given back to us in a very narrow scope, right? And so we have to really we have to intentionally diversify our friend sets and and liking things and commenting and sharing things that are not one note, that are different, in order to actually retrain our algorithm to say, actually, I do want different opinions, and I do.
Exactly. And it's a really low effort way, especially for folks on, I think TikTok is really great because, and it sounds so silly, I'm almost 50 and I'm talking about TikTok, but it's so great because it's little snippets. It's a 60-second snippet, and there's so many wonderful accounts out there that are just about educating folks, low cost, low effort, diversify your newsfeed. expose yourself to people who are not like you, whether it's, again, right now we're talking about pride, so it's the LGBTQ community, but it can be about anything. I mean, just follow folks who aren't like you and start to learn from people who are in communities that you don't take part in.
Yeah, this is great. This is great. We got some questions and comments coming in. Did you want to give any other tips, or should we take some questions?
No, we can take questions. I'm sure more tips will come.
Yes. All right. Awesome. Let's see here. Okay. Let's see what Jameson says here. Jameson, with two people as well established as y'all, I have an interview with Ryder as director of recruiting. Congratulations, Jameson. Advice on the personal back and forth and how to be perceptive to another. Jameson, can you also throw in some more clarification and context here about what your question is? Can you like maybe rephrase the question just so we're clear on it? Julie, do you need more information or
well, I'd love more information. If you can put more in, that would be helpful. What I will say is that I recently attended a session on inclusive hiring. Now, I'm not in recruitment, so I'm not really speaking for recruitment, but I did attend a training on inclusive hiring. And what was interesting was that what we were taught in this training was don't do the small talk thing when you first start the interview, which we all do. That's usually how we're trained. You start with the small talk, you look over the resume. You started it today on the show. Hey, Julie, tell me where you're at, what's going on. That's what we're used to. When we interact with other people, we tend to do that small talk thing first. And this inclusive hiring training that I attended said, listen, don't do that. Because what that does is it takes the focus away from the work, from the skills, the qualifications, and it may shift your mindset, because as soon as you start that small talk conversation, you're already labeling, you're pigeonholing, you're putting people in boxes. So I'm probably paraphrasing badly what this training taught me. Again, I'm not in recruitment, but it was really eye-opening because we do tend to go to that small talk first. And so that's something that I need to start retraining myself. So yeah, if there's more information, Jameson, I'm not sure if that hit at what you're going for or not, but let us know.
Jameson offered a little bit more info. First of all, I want to touch on the small talk thing. I'm a big fan of getting past the small talk, because especially at conferences, when you bump into people at conferences and it's like, when did you get in? How's the weather? Was travel tough? How's your hotel? I mean, it's just the most ridiculous stuff in the world. And then drilling down, but see, I kind of go the other way with it. And maybe I need to retrain, because I like to talk about people's families. I like to talk about people's situations. Like, don't give me the stock answer. I want to know how you're really doing. I want to know what's really going on. I want to know, I like to really understand who people are,
And how are you doing that? That's the question. So if you see somebody, if you see me and you see that I have a wedding ring on, do you ask questions about my husband? It's how you have those conversations. It's how you interact with other people. So it's just choosing words that value diversity. It's creating that inclusive conversation. It's opening people up to share what they're comfortable sharing and not pushing them to share what they're not comfortable sharing. So I love that you do. Listen, I'm a huge extrovert. I'm all about the small talk. I'm all about getting to know people. You can sit next to me on a plane. I'll talk to you. But it's how you do it.
So let's play this through just a moment. Help me out, like really here. So knowing that I like to really connect with people on a deep level, and knowing that I like to understand what makes people tick and what their motivations are and who they are, who their whole person is. I like to know, I don't like to look at people and say, okay, you're the vice president of such and such. I like to say, okay, you're, hobbyist, family, whatever your deal is, right? How do I get there in a way that's inclusive and sensitive to, I don't know, how do I get there in a better way?
So the facilitator in me almost wants to throw it back at you to ask you, what do you think is the best way? But I won't do that. But I kind of want to, but I won't.
You can do whatever you want. You're the guest.
I think, well, if I can do whatever I want, let me throw it back at you. What do you think would be a good way to do that?
Assuming I don't really know you at all, and I just want
stranger. We're sitting next to each other on an airplane.
Okay. So I mean, normally it's the hey, how's it going? But then okay. So what do you do is a typical, right? So what do you do?
Yeah, and that's okay.
I think it's fine, right? So what do you do, right? And then you tell me you're a leadership learning program manager. Sounds really interesting. What do you teach? What do you facilitate? What do you train people on? Oh, that sounds DE&I. Oh, wow, that sounds really. I'm assuming you would share that. That sounds really cool. I do this work in DE&I also, kind of through my thing, and now I found commonality with you, right? And
Yep.
how did you get into that? I mean, and well, I'm very interested because. And then you may choose to share something about your wife or something, or you may not. You may just say, right, it's always been something I've been interested in.
And that's exactly the point, is I may or I may not. And it's up to me to divulge what I feel safe divulging or what I feel like divulging. Maybe it's not always a safety issue. For me, not so much now with COVID where I'm working from home, but if I'm out in the world, I have to come out almost every day. Almost every interaction I have with somebody, no one ever thinks I'm gay. So I have that choice in almost every interaction, at a store, just in line at the grocery store, sitting next to somebody on a plane. We've already used that example. People just assume that I'm married to a man, and it gets very tiresome to always have to come out and divulge, no, let me correct. So sometimes I choose not to because I don't feel safe, and sometimes I just don't feel like it, right? And that's what's important about everything that you just shared, is that you're asking questions because you were genuinely curious about the other person. If you come from that place, it's always the place to start. If you're curious about somebody, ask a question, read their body language, take cues from them. If they're not comfortable or you kind of see them walling off, don't have it go any further. But it's kind of that emotional intelligence of understanding when the person on the other end of that conversation is not feeling safe, whether it's psychologically safe or truly physically safe, just move on and let it go. But what I would do is, a lot of times when people ask about families, they'll assume, like in a workplace setting, it's pretty typical to say, what are you doing this weekend? Or, you hear I've got 2 kids at Virginia Tech. You might assume that, I've got a husband at home. So it's asking questions in a way that allows that open-ended answer that doesn't pigeonhole them. So instead of you asking, so are you and your husband taking your daughter to college this fall? Just ask it in a different way. And I'm going to throw it back at you. How do you think you could ask it in a different way that doesn't assume heteronormativity?
Yeah, which is a concept, by the way, that I think is going to be a real light bulb for me also. Well, I don't know that I assumed heteronormativity in my line of questioning before.
No, not in the work question.
I'm going to avoid this question just for a moment, and I'm going to say one thing, and then you can go back to this question. Okay. Facilitator. So I'm going to say, so as I ask you how, why you got into DE, and I say, wow, that's something I'm interested too. I grew up, predominantly Black, Jewish, friend sets, and I always felt kind of different, and therefore, inclusion was really interesting to me, and kind of has always been a thread in my life, and I think also by sharing my own situation, a lot of times, sometimes it allows people to feel comfortable sharing their own situations as well.
Yeah.
As soon as I say this, I'm probably going to make a liar out of myself. You know what I'm about to say, and I'm probably going to lie, but I was going to say I don't tend to assume heteronormativity, but I probably do. I probably have these implicit biases. Yeah. She's like, I bet you do. Yeah. You stereotyped me, Julie. Anyway, no, you probably.
But really, that's the reality. Most people do. And it doesn't make them bad people. It's just, I probably do it too. It's just how the world that we live in functions. It's how our society functions. And what do we choose to do with that information? Sorry. Say that again?
I said, and what do we choose to do with that information? Knowing that we probably default to heteronormativity just like there's implicit racial bias or implicit gender bias or implicit whatever. What do we do with that information now that we know that it's there? How do we counterbalance it? How do we actively and intentionally,
That's just it. And I would say we all probably do it to some extent. We had plans with some dear friends of ours recently, and one of them is a caregiver, and I'm not going to say who or what their profession is, but they're a caregiver to patients. And they said to me, I always assume people are straight. If somebody who I'm taking care of says something about attending a wedding, I always assume that it's an opposite sex wedding. And that person is part of the LGBTQ community. So when you say, Ben, I don't really think I always assume heteronormativity, I'm going to challenge you. I bet you do, because I think
Probably right.
we mostly do.
Yeah.
Even those who are in the community.
And that's the nature of institutionalized biases, right? Is
Yep.
that even people who might be on the other side of it are still also fall under the same institutionalized biases, unfortunately.
Yep. Exactly.
Very cool. We got some questions here. Let's see here. Now Jameson's got to run. You know what? Right when we get around to Jameson, he's like, I got to bounce. I can't, I got to prep for this interview. But basically what he was trying to say, and we're going to answer all your questions right now. He is trying to say he's interviewing with a group from a major city that's way more diverse. He says, I'm a country guy, and I think what he's trying to also express is the fact that he wants to be curious, right? He just feels a little out of his depth.
Yeah, and it's tricky with interviewing because there are certain questions you can't ask, right? So you can't ask about spouses or kids or things like that. You can again, I'm not representing recruitment today, but there's some laws you need to work on avoiding.
It's so interesting because we were talking to some people from Brazil 2 days ago. Yeah, Monday, I think. And they were talking about one of the ways to improve your inclusiveness is to not put your employees, because we're also talking about global mobility and expats and things like that, right? Yep. And not put them in situations that would be, unsafe or harmful or whatever. But part of it is asking and finding out what their orientation or their family situation is. Now, a lot of people in the US are like, whoa, I don't think you can ask that. Can you ask people what their orientation or family situation is?
I don't know the answer. So I don't know the answer.
Can somebody tell us? Can somebody put it in the comments? Can you ask people what their orientation and or family situation is?
And I guess my first answer is no, you can't. I mean, you can't ask them as part of an interview. You could have it as part of a checklist on your application process, perhaps. Again, I'm not recruitment. Maybe that's something you could do, but I don't think it's necessarily something you'd want to ask about in an interview. But you bring up a good point. I'm not part of that relocation world, so maybe it makes sense in that context. Maybe it's different. I don't know the answer. I'm not the right person to answer.
Well, and one other thing that they were talking about is, we strive for diversity in our workforce, but we don't collect data. There's aspects we don't collect data on.
We don't.
We collect unlike non-visual diversity. We don't collect data on it, right? And so so then how do we ensure that we're driving toward the goals, right? It's
yep. And here's what's so funny too. So when I think about what my resume looked like 15 years ago, I did everything I could to take away anything gay. So any volunteer work that I did, anything that was part of the LGBTQ community was not represented on my resume at all. Now in 2021, with so much focus on DE&I, I'm putting things back on my resume, things that I'm involved in the LGBTQ community that otherwise would have not made it, because now it's okay. Now I feel like I'm in a place where it's okay to have those things on my resume. So it's just fascinating thinking about my own journey and just where I was, 10 years ago, 5 years ago even. And now as I kind of look at what I'm willing to put out there, it's shifted the whole mindset. So yeah, but you're right. We don't collect metrics often on who's in the LGBTQ community. It's not typically on applications. It could be, it's usually not.
Yeah, and our HR partners who are in here, Jody, shout out to Jody Harris, says no, you cannot.
Yep, perfect. That's
Jack Gempel, no, you cannot ask.
Can you clarify for those folks who are in the know? Can you not ask on an application or just in the interview? Because it's my guess that you could have it as part of an application, but maybe not. I'm not the right person to ask.
Jody goes on to say, if they share information, however, you have to make sure that it is not part of the hiring decision.
All right.
Interesting.
Makes sense. What's interesting, though, is that when you think about what the organizations can do to make people feel safe enough to share information, to divulge information, is create content on your website that says right out of the, I mean, yes, here's what we support here. Here's what our DE&I efforts look like at this organization. If you scroll through LinkedIn now, you can see all the organizations that have rainbow logos now, and then the ones that don't. But you can kind of get a sense for who the organization is if you just do a little bit of digging. Both not allowed. Okay, thanks, Jack. That's helpful. That's what I thought, but never know.
Unless there's a Department of Labor metric you cannot ask.
Yeah, and that's what I was curious if that was part of those, but it's not. Okay, now we know.
We've got some really great questions. I've got my own questions. I'm like, I want to be inclusive of our audience here and make sure we include their questions. Okay, I always say their questions are more important than mine. So I'm gonna start from the top here. Bear with me. I'm gonna get to all of them, and we have a brilliant top 5 today. All right, Rachel Fisher-Lyons, I would love to hear tips for asking leadership to hold DE&I training for the company. How do we go to the bosses and say, hey, you know what? We need some DE&I training here.
Yeah, and it's right now, this is like the thing to do, right? If you scroll through LinkedIn, there are more jobs for DE&I folks than I've ever seen in my lifetime. This is the time to jump in on it. Lots of people are looking at their board of directors, they're looking at their senior and executive leadership, and they're saying, this is not a diverse slate. So people are really getting into it now. I would say, Rachel, you just have to start the conversation, take it up through HR, have HR work with those executive leadership team members and just say, here's why it's important. If you have statistics to back it up, so you've got, and again, there's no statistic, there's no metric for people in the LGBTQ community, but just broadening that a little bit. If you've got metrics of you're able to bring in people of color, but then the turnover rate is so high for that subset of folks you've got working for you, then that's the metric you bring in, and you take whatever ammunition you've got and you have that conversation, you influence them, because if they don't get it now, I mean, now's the time.
Yeah, I agree. You're never going to have more momentum and more support. Right. I mean, frankly, a lot of people will probably do it even if they're not there themselves. They probably, I mean, there's a lot of talk around performative support and performative allyship, right? Exactly. And everybody's got, you know, the rainbow logo, right? I mean, you know, we have it as, you know, Love and Relo, we did it this week as well, you know, and I think, and I think there's also a subset of people out there, and I want your thoughts on this. I mean, you know, personal thoughts. There's a subset of people out there that say, well, I'm not going to do it because it's just going to look performative, or, you know, whatever. There's almost a, I don't know, reluctance to be performative in it. What are your thoughts about performative allyship?
So I have complicated thoughts. I love scrolling through my LinkedIn newsfeed and seeing all the rainbow logos. To me, that tells me if I were to work for that organization, they would welcome me with open arms. So on the one hand, yes, it's performative. It's not a verb. We talked about an ally being a verb before, and it's about action. But on the other hand, that's signifying something. That's saying DE&I is important enough to this organization that they're going to fly the rainbow flag, or they're going to include a logo, or they're going to have programming about other DE&I things. So yes, it's performative, and also it's really important in some ways too. So I don't know. I've got complicated feelings. Rachel, I want to go back to your question a little bit more too, is when we think about the DE&I training and we think about the journey that different organizations are on, first of all, it's the right thing to do. It's just the right thing to do. And it's also really important from a perspective of when we have more voices at the table, when we have different perspectives weighing in on a decision, we actually perform better as organizations. So even if organizations are not necessarily bought in for the LGBTQ community, or for hiring more people of color in leadership positions, or whatever other DE&I facet you want to think about, it's just the right thing to do, because focusing on creating an inclusive environment is the right thing to do for every employee in your organization. And having diverse perspectives makes that organization perform better. You'll have a better outcome. You'll achieve your strategic goals better with diversity. So it's the right thing to do, but also from a business perspective, there's really a lot of research out there that backs that up. So again, Rachel, now's the time. Hop on that momentum, bring in your ammunition, take your metrics to your executive team, and good luck.
That's awesome. That's cool. About the performative thing too. I agree with you. I think it's better. It's an action, and it's better than not doing it. I mean, what does not doing it say? It's like you're leaving way too much to am I supposed to assume that you're an ally if you don't I agree. I agree. Plus it also changes when we talk about heteronormative, well, it normalizes, right, as well, right? So anyway, yeah.
For that month, the folks who are at the organization feel seen. And that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
When I drive down the highway and I see my organization sporting a giant billboard with Happy Pride, I feel seen. I feel proud to work for the organization. It's a big deal. So I think, yes, it's performative, but also it's got its purpose.
All right. I'm getting emotional. All right. Jody, I had to work as a parent to show. Jody's going to be on Friday. Everybody tune in. This is awesome. Jody's going to talk about her kid as well. Jody says, I had to work as a parent to show my kids that I was open to them not being straight. I say, are you interested in anyone versus interested in a girl? It takes active thought. Do you have other ideas for people who would like to reduce the automatic bias / assumption? Ooh.
That's so funny. So, not to put my kids on the spot, but I remember one of my children, who I won't say which one, came to us at one point and said, I need you to know that I'm not gay. They thought we'd be worried that they weren't gay. And it just brought me back. I thought that was funny. I know. Yeah, it does take afterthought. Do you have other ideas for people who would like to reduce that automatic bias and assumption? Yeah, it takes thought. It takes practice. Practice saying the right thing. Practice choosing words that honor diversity. Practice creating that inclusive conversation. Again, looking at that GLAAD media resource guide that we talked about that some folks were linking, going back to that, it gives you a little bit of ideas in there. So I would say read through that, get some ideas, and just practice. So is there anyone you're interested in? Or tell me about your weekend, or tell me about your wedding, or whatever it is. Just really try to practice. And my best advice is practice with somebody who you feel safe with. Take your best friend, take your spouse, take somebody who 100% has your back, know you've got the best of intentions, and just role play and practice with them. If it's important enough to you to have other people feel included, then just practice and do it in a safe environment where, we've all got those people in our lives, I hope, where we can just say, okay, I don't want to sound stupid, so let me just run this by you, not necessarily on a live LinkedIn show, but just privately. Practice with people who you trust and see if you can get it through rote practice and repetition. Yeah,
it is repetition, because if we go our whole life doing it one way, and then it's like, oh, we can't do it anymore, and then the people clam up because then they don't want to talk at all. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, and unfortunately that's where we're at sometimes with some of these different conversations is people clam up and they don't want to talk at all because they're afraid to say the wrong thing. And
exactly. And as a facilitator, one of my favorite things to say in a class that I'm facilitating is, ooh, tell me more. And that just opens it up. It has nothing to do with anybody's gender or relationship or topic even. It just says, ooh, tell me more. That tells the other person that you're interested in what they have to say. The world is theirs to open up and share more information about whatever it is. Now, that's not usually about LGBTQ topics, but it's just a really great phrase that you can take and use in your personal life, day-to-day interactions. Ooh, tell me more. And just let them open up.
Yeah, we could all be better question askers and better listeners in every walk of life. I think that's great. Ooh, tell me more works really well. Robert Brizuela, but could an RMC? Okay, going back to can you ask, right? But could an RMC counselor during a pre-hire candidate assessment ask these questions questions for all parties to best prepare for issues during relocation, and either share or not with the corporate client? RMC, relocation management company counselor. So basically, if you're in the situation of processing a relocation and you think it's pertinent to the safety, let's say of the assignee, of the expat, let's say, could you ask it? I mean, that's a question not necessarily for Julie or I, but maybe even for the broader audience. I do know that I think it was Paul Seymour was having a conversation. I don't know if it was on air in the green room, I think. And Paul, if you're watching, you might want to answer Robert's question here. But there's ways, I think, to signal or signify that maybe there are benefits available, regardless of the family type, or family structure, and just ways to use broad language, I think, inclusive language. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, we're not the people to weigh in on that. But the other thing I might suggest, again, not really knowing, is could you have some kind of like an overview one pager about whatever the relocation location is that might indicate safety issues? So I don't know, just something to throw out there.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. We're gonna do your top 5, Julie. We're gonna start just a touch early because it's so good, and I want to give you my top 5 light bulb moments from this conversation.
Love it. But I haven't made you cry yet, so we can't end yet.
Well, no, you got me emotional. We're going to count emotional. My wife counts crying as welling up, even though I count crying as a tear actually dropping from the precipice of the lid. But we're going to count. Well, I got a little emotional when you were talking about going down the highway, seeing Pride billboard and feeling like you were seen. I hear that. I see that. I'm with you. Stacy, we got a top 5 from Julie. What is your top 5 today, Julie King?
Top 5 tips for anyone seeking to grow in their understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion during Pride Month and beyond. Drum roll, please. Number 5, respect all people. Sounds so basic. It just sounds so basic, but it's true. Just respect other people, human to human. Just respect people for being people.
It's very intuitive, this one.
Yep.
This one should not take a ton of retraining and practice and reprogramming.
My top 5 are not super academic top 5s. They're just super easy top 5s. All right. Number 4.
Footnotes. Number 4.
Choose words and phrases that reflect inclusivity, which we've talked about again a little bit here today. Just being open to having you rephrase questions, rephrase conversations in a way that doesn't pigeonhole people, doesn't put them in a box, but allows them to share as they see fit, as they're comfortable.
Yeah, that's great. That one takes some training. That one requires some work, I think.
Yep, exactly.
Number 3.
Don't make assumptions that default to heteronormativity or the belief that heterosexuality is the norm, even if you don't think you're doing it. Not that I'm pointing fingers at anyone, but even if you don't think this applies to you, it might. So again, you don't always have to other somebody. We're all just people. So just stop making assumptions about other people, period.
And heteronormativity, is there gender normativity? Is that a thing?
Yeah, that's a thing. It's also part of that GLAD media resource guide. So you'll learn some. Now it's long, so I will say spend some time, grab a cup of coffee or a drink or whatever, and settle in and read that guide. But yeah, I mean, people assume things about people all the time. It's natural. We all tell stories to ourselves about other people. If I'm driving on the highway and somebody cuts me off, even though I'm a trained facilitator who teaches people not to judge other people, I'm making up stories about whoever just cut me off. And it's not usually going to be positive. Like on a generous, good day, maybe you're pregnant and you're about to deliver your kid and like you have to get to the hospital. But let's be honest, 99% of the time, that's not the story I'm telling myself. So we do all make assumptions about other people. All I'm asking for is just try to lay that aside, especially as it comes to who people are in relationships with, what gender they're presenting. Just stop making assumptions about other people, unless you're getting cut off on the highway.
Yeah, and then it's like no holds barred.
Right.
Let me know in the comments if you're watching right now which of Julie's top 5 is your favorite. These speak to me. This one right here particularly speaks to me. Number 2,
celebrate differences and reject the tendency to label people. We're so much better when we think about how diverse we all are. All diversity means is difference. So you and I are diverse because we're different. We're not the same people. I don't represent the whole LGBTQ community. I don't represent all femme lesbians. I don't represent all white women. I can't represent a whole group because each person is an individual person. So let's just celebrate each other for who we are and for the differences that we bring to every interaction. That's it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Hit that applause button for Julie on that one. I'm hitting it. There we go. Love it. Number one,
seek to understand with curiosity. I'll always say this. If you have questions about somebody, ask them if you're coming from a place with genuine curiosity. If you have judgments in your mind and you're asking the question with kind of a judgmental way, you know the difference. So if you're truly seeking to understand, I would much rather have somebody ask me a question. It's still up to me if I choose to answer it or not, but I'd much rather they ask me a direct question than talk behind my back or make assumptions or leap to conclusions that aren't true. So I'd much rather people came to me with a genuine, curious question. Not everybody will appreciate all questions at all times, but if you're coming from a really good place, if you've got good intentions, ask questions.
Yeah, I think that's the intentions part is good, and making sure that your intentions are clear in the way that you ask the question, and I think that there's questions that are asked, there's questions that are asked with the intention of making other people feel better, and there's questions that are asked with the intention of making other people feel smaller or less than.
Yep, and we all know the difference.
Yeah, and there's questions that are asked because you don't know the answer, and there's questions that are asked because you're seeking to confirm your own prejudice or bias about somebody, right? And I think those are key. And so having empathy, and if you truly have empathy in your heart, it comes across even when the words don't always match up, and people will give you grace. In fact, Janet up here said one thing I really enjoy. Janet says, if we all offer grace, it's the best. I've been corrected gently not to refer or assume the spouse is same sex. I think once you make the mistake once, you're most likely not to do it again. Yeah.
Somebody wise once said, and I kind of locked onto this, trust is earned or eroded one conversation at a time. And it's so true. Every interaction we have with another human being is an opportunity to earn trust. You either erode it or you earn it, one conversation at a time. So just think about that as you're interacting with other people, diversifying your newsfeed, kind of getting out there, educating yourself, looking up resources, so many videos to watch, books to read, all kinds of things. The education is out there for those who seek it. And it's just one conversation at a time.
I love it. And this conversation has been phenomenal. I have 5 things that I've been taking notes like a good student. I've been taking notes here, and I have 5 takeaway things that I'm going to be thinking about.
Let's go.
Number 1, ally is a verb. Be action oriented and prepared to step in.
Yes.
I've done this, and I've also not done this, and I need to be more consistent about doing this. Number 2, the GLAAD.org, the GLAAD.org, which the link was shared earlier. Props to everybody that did that. Brushing up on the terminology so that I have the words and the concepts needed to have these conversations in a respectful and inclusive manner, because I want to continue to have these conversations. I want to continue leading in this area, but I also realize I need the tools to do that. So brushing up on those things. And reading some books. You have a book that you want to recommend also?
Yeah, I love this book. We can't talk about that at work. This is
How many times have you heard that?
This is a great book. We can't talk about that at work. How to talk about race, religion, politics, and other polarizing topics. It is not true that you can't talk about those things at work. You just need to know how.
I love it. Because I love talking about all those things at work. Anyway, yeah, okay, awesome. Number 3, make it personal. Making it personal. Last night, talking to those guys I was hanging out with, making it personal, changed the whole tone of the conversation.
Yep.
And when I've had conversations about race, about gender, about whatever, and there were misconceptions where a lot of it stems from a lack of familiarity. It really stems from a lack of familiarity, because the familiarity is the source of empathy. It's the source of context. It's the source of more data. I mean, familiarize yourself with the people who are actually, not the issues. Because we talk about people, to your point earlier about representing, I don't represent all white women. I don't represent all lesbians. We talk about people in such generalities, right? Groups of peoples, and yet we're all individuals, right?
Exactly.
You have to remember the individual. Number 4, diversify your news feed. Yeah, got to be intentional about that. Yep. I'd like to think I do a decent job, but I probably could do better, right? So I will be clicking like on a lot more stuff, especially this month, to be getting some more stuff thrown at me. And then number 5, the concept of heteronormativity. And that, in this concept that hetero is normal, and like the norm, which then makes, of course, other, not hetero, the other, right? And I think othering was a concept that we've kind of learned with racial discussions as well. And it happens with all, in all marginalized situations by definition, right? So it's like othering, right? And again, we all have so much in common to other misses most of the point. I think 99% of who a person is. So heteronormativity, I think this is something, the one that I've been really, I've been wrestling with is guys, the word guys.
I hate the word guys.
I really like the word guys. I can't get it out of my lexicon. I'm like, hey guys, how's it going? Mixed group, whatever. Hey guys.
You would never address a group of mixed folks and say, hey ladies. Never. You would never do it. Think about it. What would happen if you have a group of people, some women, some men, and somebody goes, hey ladies.
If you do it, it would be a joke. It would be a joke.
It would never happen.
I mean, Tim raised his hand too, but I mean, it's a joke. You wouldn't do it seriously, for sure.
That's a whole other show.
So give me a better. So how do and I mean, it's so.
Oh my gosh, there's so many other. You could just say y'all. You're in the South, right? You're from Texas. You can say y'all. You can say folks. You can say hey. You can just not address. You could just do something different.
Hey everybody! I do hey everybody when I open the show.
Hey friends. Hey, I mean, there's a million. Yeah.
Hey friends. I like hey friends. I'm going hey friends.
Guys is not. Oh, it's a big pet peeve of mine, and it's something that I do too. And every time I do it, I'm like internally cringing. Yeah.
You do it too sometimes?
It happens. I'm human. I
respect you so much, Julie. Thank you for admitting that you do it too.
And again, I mean, we're all raised in this society where that's what people say. So of course I say it, but I hate it every time I do.
Hey everybody. Hey friends. Hey y'all.
Hey y'all.
This is great. Jason Sudo, this is such a great show. Julie and Ben, so proud of Love and Reload this week. Thank you, Jason. You're a big part of it. Appreciate you so much. Valerie, this has been a great conversation. So many takeaways. Thank you so much. This is great. Fantastic. Rachel saying you're texting now. You can say y'all. That's right. I moved down here for the contractions. Jody Harris, this is why y'all is awesome. Thank you, Jody. I'll see you Friday. Can't wait. Eric Lewis, good point. I do the same. Good points. Yep, we're using alternatives here. Jody Harris is always selling the y'all. Straight up, Jody, y'all is so underrated. Okay,
I love it.
There we go. Well, y'all, this has been a great show. I appreciate everybody getting in the comments. Hit that like button again if you haven't done so. Show some love and support to Julie and everybody this Pride Week. Julie, I want to give you the opportunity, just maybe one final thought, if you want to leave us with something.
I so appreciate given this opportunity to just talk to you, have a conversation. Hopefully we've shared some insights that people will have their own light bulb moments. I know you've had some. I loved your top 5. That was really impressive that you just did it like that. So just thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for having folks on the show who really give people chances to learn about other people. And I hate to other people, but it's true. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Julie. Thanks for being here. And thanks for always telling your truth and your authentic story. This is great. And thank you all for being here as well in the comments. Love it. It's always better when you're here. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to participate. It means so much to me and everyone else. We got a wonderful lineup for the rest of Pride Week. So tune in. We're going to be on all 5 days, Thursday and Friday as well. Can't wait until tomorrow.